Yeah, so we did a writing retreat. I think we went to Centre Parks because we were like, let's find somewhere fun. And we went to Centre Parks for, I think it was 3 or 4 days. And I think even more than this was like the second day. I think we had this kind of like piano riff that didn't make it to the final song. It was this like little line, and we started writing some verses. And I actually think that one, it felt like it came pretty quickly in the sense of like the structure of the song. And then we got to this kind of bridge and we weren't super sure what to do with it. And I think Emily, one of the West readers here, she had this like, even more than this line. So I think there's clips on our Instagram and stuff of us all kind of going, even more than this, even more than this. And I think there were about 5 different visions in that moment for the song going all these different directions, but we knew that was like a center point. So we started running with that. And it was one of those songs that we were doing a lot of production whilst we were writing. So you were getting, it was like as you were singing the song, you could hear the drum part and you could hear the band and you could hear the energy, and we could feel the sense of the even more than this in our room at church. And so I think because of that, we ended up going back and looking at the lyrics and going, actually what we want to write is literally what the Lord is doing in his house at that moment. So we were describing how we worship him and what he does when we worship him. So you had all the chorus of, the verses were here in his house, here in his presence, lovers of Jesus, dancing in freedom. And it was like we were picturing what the Lord has given us and what he's doing in our space, and writing a song just explaining it really, which then meant as we did the song outside of our context, it was like, this is literally explaining what the Lord has given us, and we're teaching it and doing it.
I think one of the things we were learning as a church was that as we come into the presence of God, there is always more. Mm-hmm. And we sense that more, but how do you get into the more? Mm-hmm. And we love those verses where David dances before the ark and he says, I will become even more undignified than this. So it's the sense of stepping out of our comfort zone and starting to understand a little bit where James says, draw near to God and he will draw near to you. And that there needs to be movement and expression on our behalves where we actually physically draw near into the presence of God. We push in to where he is to find the even more than this. And as we did that, this joy and excitement and even dance started to break out. Mm-hmm. So one of the expressions of this that we saw in our church was people coming forward. Mm-hmm. to worship and dance. How did that start to happen?
I remember, it was years and years ago. Do you remember Robbie Dawkins coming to the front? Do you remember that? So we did I can't remember what it was. It was a conference or a Sunday. It was something in church. And we literally, we'd opened the service, we started worshiping, and he walked right up to the front. His legs were touching the front of our stage. It was really uncomfortable. He was like right there, and I was like, what on earth are you doing? And it was like it broke something in the room. And like 1 or 2 people came down, but like it always is, maybe you have your more bold and wild people coming down first. Yeah. And then over the years, more have come. And I think what's really beautiful is probably for us first, like there was a lot of young people coming down the front and youth, and maybe the people who, on paper, everyone would be like, well, they can dance, they can move, those kind of people were there. But then what we found is the more we worshipped and the more he came, the more the front was littered with just so many different people. Yeah. So you had people of all kinds of ages and all kinds of backgrounds coming and dancing before the Lord. And it was interesting that as the Lord came, there was coordination in the sense of when he was doing something joyful in the room, people were dancing with joy. And it sometimes felt like there was freedom dance, or it sometimes felt like there was something more intimate. And that was mirrored, but people were expressing their love to God both kind of together and separately. And it was like something only he could do. There was no way we could have convinced that eclectic group of people to come down the front and dance for Jesus. It just wasn't possible. I don't think there was enough money in the planet to pay them to. It just wouldn't have happened. Yeah.
One of the things we did in the summer was we taught about dance. Mm-hmm. And often when dance is mentioned in the Old Testament, it isn't a random thing, but it often means round dance or a coordinated dance, or I think in Psalm 149 it says the dance. And so anybody like me who's not a natural dancer
There's both of us.
is terrified of getting it wrong. So one of the things we did was we got some of our dancers on the stage. And in fact, actually, that morning we got all the guys forward who were probably the more reticent amongst the church. And they literally led us into dance for how we could move. And there was a scale of success of what happened there. But certainly one of the testimonies was of a wife who watched her husband dance that morning on the live stream, said she'd never seen him dance.
Since their wedding day.
Since their wedding day.
Which would have been 30, 40 years
30,
ago.
40 years. So it was a precious thing when dance started breaking into the church and people's lives started changing. And I think one of the things we're learning is that dance breaks the chains. Dance changes the environment very quickly. So we could spend hours and hours, maybe in thanksgiving and praise, but the moment people start moving, the whole atmosphere of the room starts to change. The presence of the Lord comes, and even miracles. I don't know if you remember, we did a revival prayer where we called some people forward to dance. Do you remember what happened?
You want me?
Yeah, go on, tell the story.
Yeah, I mean, we had a few. It was a normal revival prayer, right? So we
as
were,
normal as they get.
As normal as they get. That might not mean the same thing for everyone watching this, but it was a normal revival prayer. We had worship was great. The Lord was there, but it felt like a very, very normal night. Which I say because sometimes I think when you tell these stories, people assume there was like this intense, rushing presence of the Lord, and we had no choice. There definitely wasn't that. The Lord was there, but some people were in, some people were out. And I know that you had said that there were a couple of guys in the church that had spoken to you probably that week, all in need of quite significant, large breakthrough in their life. And they were big breakthroughs. They weren't little things, you know?
Yeah.
And we'd worship for a bit. The worship would kind of come into this space where you were getting ready to minister. And you said you felt the Lord say to call them forward to dance. And I mean, I remember you doing it because you called them out by name. You know, we're in a room of 100 people. I think, was there 3 or 4 of them?
Yep.
Something like that came down to the front. And I'm thinking, God, I mean, this could be so painfully awkward. Yep. It felt awkward.
And it was painfully awkward.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was feeling their pain. I wasn't even up there, you know. And these guys came forward. And, I mean, was it dancing? It was like... It was linking arms and kind of walking in a circle, and it broke into something eventually, and more people came down the front, and we had an acoustic guitar. It wasn't like there was some kind of groove that was making it easy, you know. And they, I mean, probably we probably danced as a community with these people walking this thing out for 10 minutes, something like that. There were no fireworks. There were nothing happened. I mean, I think we felt it was fun when you step out like that. Everyone, did have fun in the end. And then that week, I think all of them got the breakthrough they needed. Yeah,
one was a financial breakthrough, one was a legal breakthrough, and one was a job breakthrough. And they all went home, and I wondered if they would ever speak to me again. But within that week, every single circumstance turned around. And that was a big lesson for us, that actually when you step out of your comfort zone, when you draw near to the Lord, when you become a little undignified, it releases something in the spiritual realm for God to perform a miracle. And I guess that's what we've been seeing as a church, that as the joy has been released, we've seen more salvation. We've seen more healing and an excitement about what God is doing. And I don't know about you, but I guess what should church be like? surely when we come to church, it should be a time of celebration, of enjoying the presence of the Lord. And I think that's what we've been seeing amongst our people, and certainly amongst the new converts. What are we going to invite people into? You know, we're inviting them for their sins to be forgiven. We're inviting them to receive healing from the Lord. If that doesn't produce joy and rejoicing, I don't know what will. And I guess so when we worship, when we gather, we've been learning to share the testimony, to enter his gates with thanksgiving, courts with praise, and seen the release of his presence amongst the people. That then releases this into an intimate worship with that everything has fallen by the wayside. So it's us and him.
Yeah, I think it's funny, isn't it? Because I think just even in the worshiping community, there is a desire for the intimacy you talk about. But I think it sometimes has felt like, and even I've been guilty of this, it manifests in like a starting in a really intense, heavy place, which almost sometimes ends up looking like kind of a slumber in the room. It's like we're so kind of down, and you walk into a space and it's like the Lord, it almost feels like the Lord is sad. Like our picture of what encountering the presence of God looks like is that he is intense and heavy and sad. And it's like, no, there are intense, powerful moments in the presence of God, but the Holy Spirit is not a box. He is so much bigger than that. And so that's part of what we've been learning, right? That we can come in with this joy and this praise and this dance, and it breaks something in the room, and the presence of God comes. And this sense of it is not more holy because we are more intense. It is more holy because the Lord is there. And so the number one desire is that the Lord would come. And so whatever that looks like is really doing what he said. And what we found is that he has spoken to us so specifically about joy and dance. And so he has come, and he's healing the sick. He's leading people to himself. People have a freedom. I mean, it's been so fun for us watching people as they come in to worship, and you even literally physically see them maybe start further back in the room, and over the weeks they start to creep forward, and then you see that one person down the front, and it's like you literally watch week in, week out as the kind of afflictions and the stuff they've been carrying and the marks of the world literally come off, and we see people down the front worshiping, and in weeks or months they look like different people. And if people aren't coming into church and getting changed, what's going on? It's wrong. They must leave differently. If we're really encountering Jesus, there's going to be signs and fruit of that, right?
I think the thanksgiving, the praise, the testimony takes our eyes off us and makes it about Jesus. And when it's all about Jesus, when we come into those intimate moments where the glory is there, it's about him and not about us and our stuff. That means our eyes are already on heaven, which means heaven can do what heaven does. And the miracles start to break out. And then one of the things we've learned is we always finish with joy. And we come into his presence where there is fullness of joy, but we leave his presence taking the joy to the world.
And gratitude.
And gratitude. That's it.